Okay, welcome back to the Are You Strong show. Man, I want to say the word extraordinary guest on the show today. I'm going to list off some of the accolades or accomplishments that this, I can say young man, because he's a lot younger than me, has accomplished so far. First, he was an athlete, college baseball player at Ole Miss, catcher. I mean, you don't get any bigger college baseball than playing there. Graduated from college, became an attorney, right? And you don't see too many athletes going on to the legal field, so that's another major accomplishment. But specializing working with student athletes, their families, really helping them, create and protect their brand in the NIL world, maximizing their potential, while they're on and off the field. Works with athletic departments, to bring innovative ideas, educational programs, really navigate all the legal complexities that are out there. It has all kinds of worldly experience here and stuff. First is consulting with team ownerships, game day operations, fan engagements, legal representation with athletes to protect their interest in their field, NIL brand creation and protection, NIL deal brokering to unlock opportunities for the athletes. I can go on and on with so many different things that this young man has accomplished. But, I want to welcome Justin Brashear to the show. JB, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you for having me.
I'm glad to have you. And again, there's a lot more to list out, but I ran out of room on the paper,
Man, you're too kind. You're
you
too
know.
kind.
And so before I get into grilling you with a whole slew of questions I have, and if you don't mind, why don't you kind of just tell the audience a little bit about yourself and where you're from, sports, legal side, and the fun that you're having.
Sounds good, man. Thank you. So I was born and raised and currently live in Southwest Louisiana. Um, Married with two kids, and my wife is from here as well. We actually live right next door to my in-laws, so it's a very tight-knit family community. Um, you sort of mentioned it. I've been blessed to travel a lot and be around the country and play ball in a lot of different places. Yeah, as you mentioned, I went to Ole Miss, played for legendary Coach Bianco there. Um, Went on. I was actually drafted, played a couple seasons of professional ball in the Diamondbacks organization before law school, and then like you said, law school is where I went and where I ended up. I've been in private practice now. Today is actually my 11th anniversary of being sworn in,
Wow,
from
congratulations.
2013. So thank you. Yeah, I've done a whole host of types of legal. I've handled a whole bunch of different types of legal matters, transactional, litigation wise, and the last 4 years I've been on my own and really have enjoyed the process of sort of taking an entrepreneurial spin on creating and protecting and establishing and developing my own brand and how I do what I do. And now getting an opportunity, given the complex legal landscape out there, I get a lot of opportunity to work with athletes and families and athletic departments and help navigate through some issues and hopefully make the global world of sports a little bit better for everyone.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So let's go backwards in time.
Okay.
And for the people that are listening, is it's like, well, how far back are we going to go? But let's go back to your high school days. We were chatting before we started the show, and you talked about being down in Louisiana. It's baseball is everything down there. And the question I had, is it bigger than football? You're like, yeah, in your area, baseball is everything.
Mm-hmm.
But but what inspired you to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to stick to baseball, and I'm going to take baseball as far as I can go, college, pro. What was the inspiration there?
Um, Luck and an injury, honestly. Um, I was playing football in high school, and I'd played a little bit of pee wee stuff, and I was better at baseball. I played more baseball, but I really enjoyed football. And as a freshman, I ended up playing on the varsity junior varsity team, and practicing and practice squad with the varsity squad, and I got hurt, and so I had season-ending injury, had to have surgery, and then that off season from football, I actually made the baseball team still in a cast. I had a cast on my hand, made the baseball team. I got an opportunity throughout that for my freshman year to really. I mean, we played. I played with three or four guys on that team that played Division I ball. I got to see them, go on and play in the SEC, in the Southland Conference, and a couple other places around. And I lucked into the situation where we were a senior heavy team, and I had an opportunity of, sort of a captive opportunity to to make a run at a starting spot as a sophomore. And the program at the time was an up and coming program. We had won our first state championship in 1998, won the second one actually my freshman year in high school in 2000, and since then they've gone on to win 10 other ones, including
Wow.
3 national championships. So it's a little bit dynastic where I come from the baseball side of things. And so really, um, that focus happened whenever the opportunity presented itself, and I dove in on it, and I started working really hard. I mean, it went down to taking batting practice on Christmas Day, a lot of times, or your throwing program all throughout the summer, and ended up that focus ended up taking me to Team USA in 2001, where I played on the USA national team, the youth national team. We played in Mexico and won a gold medal for our country. And so at that point, I kind of knew baseball made a lot of sense, and grades were good. And, I had an opportunity. I kind of sensed that when I was 15, 16, that I could go on to do some good things in the game, both, on and off the field.
Yeah. So how the heck do you make a baseball team with a cast on your hand?
I was a catcher, so I was a left-handed hitting catcher, and that helps first of all. Um, and I think fortunately, I've back to luck. I've been pretty lucky to have some incredible coaches that have poured into me. I've seen a lot of good and a lot of potential skill that they could nourish and help develop and have helped guide me along the way. And Coach Chiquini is one of those guys that he saw something in me. He saw something in the way I operated behind the plate and at the plate, and kind of gave me an opportunity to get better and push myself. And I was a 3-year starter in high school, and a couple, all the accolades that come with it, and drafted, and all that kind of stuff. And I think largely because there were coaches that saw the opportunity and saw the skill set that maybe I didn't realize, or hadn't
Yeah.
sort of matured into yet, and they pushed me to find it.
That's great. So what was your high school or really college recruiting experience like? It's not like you were going to a D3 around the corner.
No,
You went to one of the biggest powerhouse college baseball programs in the country.
it was bananas. I was at the time I was one of the highest rated recruits in my class around the country. You throw a dart at the map and pick a school that's close to it. I probably was contacted by them, from Stanford to West Point, Miami to Oregon State, all points in between. I knew I wanted to stay in the South, just because having grown up here, I played a lot of ball in Georgia, played a lot of ball in Florida. The weather's great for baseball, so we don't really have one season, and that's hot,
Yeah.
so we get a chance to play outside a lot. And, I knew that was sort of where I wanted to be. I was very heavily recruited by Duke, which was a fantastic opportunity. I had a great visit up there, but I went to Ole Miss, and it was just a special place, man. It was just instantly. Yeah, people told me going through the process that, oh, you'll know when you get on campus, and I thought it was bull. I thought, yeah, I mean, some of you are saying that, but truthfully, when I got on the campus, when I saw the locker room, I saw the facilities, I met with the coaches, I could see myself physically there, and not only when the fun stuff was going on, during the recruiting visit, but the Tuesday nights when it's raining and you gotta go to study hall after working out all day, and long days, the grind, the gruel, the grueling schedule. I still was peaceful there, and
Yeah.
so I made my commitment and stuck with it, all the way through signing day. And looking back on it, it was a great opportunity. It was really the first time in my life that I experienced any adversity, any real adversity. I was on my own. I was still in the South, but I was 7 hours from home, so I had to do some growing up. I had to really soul search and figure out who I wanted to be, instead of the version that you are when you're coming up in your hometown.
Yeah.
Sort of how I wanted to hold myself, and what I wanted to do. And yeah, like I said, it was a very transformative and wonderful moment in time in my life.
So I always ask this question. High school, you're on the team, and I said you come from a very good program, so you
Hmm.
had a lot of good kids on the team, right?
Hmm.
But you were one of the better, if not the best guy. You go to Ole Miss, you show up as a freshman. Now you're there with how many guys on the baseball team? 40?
It was probably 40 back then.
40, right?
Yeah.
And they all come from the same, they're the
Yeah.
best. What was
Hmm.
it like showing up as a freshman? How did you adapt to that? You mentioned before challenges,
Yeah.
adversity. What did you face? How did you overcome it? What kind of things took place your freshman year?
Well, that was the first time I was away from home for an extended period of time. You know, we at Ole Miss at the time. I don't know if it's still the rule, but everyone had to live on campus, so it was. I was used to having my own space. I had, grew up in a nice home where I had my own room, and I had people taking care of stuff for me.
Yeah.
Now you got to do it on your own. You got to get up on your own. You got to get to class, and just learning how to be an adult really in that first period in time. Um, I was overcoming a knee injury from my high school, the end of my high school career. So I wasn't as healthy as I should have been going in. And, long term now I've learned how to properly take care of my body and try to recover from, those kinds of things. And um, I think the hardest part though was, I wasn't the guy. I wasn't we're coming out of high school. I knew every day I was going to walk in the locker room. I was going to hit third or fourth, and I was going to catch or play first base, and I knew I was going to be, in the middle of everything and having an opportunity to help the team win. And in college, I had to learn how to help the team win in different ways, and that was a challenge for me that was hard to overcome at first. My freshman year, that was a really tough part. It got better my sophomore year, and then ultimately my junior year, I was able to go on the field on a regular basis and put up some decent numbers and got drafted again and had the opportunity at that point to go play pro baseball. But um, it was I think the realization to your point that you come from a small pond, you're a big fish. Well, it's a big ocean out there, and there's a lot of really talented players. I want to say I played with, oh man, probably in my 3 years in college. In high school, I played with one guy that played in the big leagues and had a really good career. We're so fortunate. He's back in town and helping coach the team this year. So I'm
Cool.
excited to see what they do. Um, College, I played with one, two, three, about probably 7 or 8 guys. One guy's still in the big leagues, actually, believe it or not, after all these years.
It's
So
amazing.
yeah, yeah, he's
What team's he on?
so he was finished year with St. Louis. Lance
All
Lynn,
right.
big burly guy.
Cool.
Yeah, he's still throwing fastballs, man. That's what he's known for.
All right.
But yeah, it was when you get to a place like that, and you look at it from that perspective where you're playing with guys at that upper talent level. The challenge was just so fun. I mean, Friday nights in the SEC are hard to beat, man. You got major league pitchers going at each other and crowds, 7, 8, 10,000 strong. It's fun. It's a lot of fun.
I can only imagine, it's probably 80 degrees, lights are on. It's
Hmm.
what's 8,000 people there. It's
Hmm.
college campus.
Hmm.
It's just got to be electrifying.
It was awesome, and we were there. We were really good. Those that I played from 2004 to 2006, and we were the first team in '04 to actually host a regional tournament. In '05 and '06, we hosted both a regional and a super regional. We were one win from Omaha twice, so you play that deep into the tournament, and it's really intense moments. You playing
Yeah.
in meaningful, impactful plays and games that were really fun. But yeah, they started the beverage showers, we'll call them, in right
Okay.
field when people hit home runs. There at Ole Miss, there's a wall of beverages that come flying in the air from the student section,
Really.
and oh yeah, when you hit a home run on a Friday night and those
I
red
hope it's no
cups.
cans and bottles. It's just
No,
like,
it's all in red cups, man.
okay.
The magic of Ole Miss. You never know what's
All
in the
right.
red Solo cup. But it's running to first base and knowing you just hit a home run and watching the students go wild and the fans go crazy was, I mean, I still think about those things
And how long has that tradition been going on?
since about probably the 05, 06 window, I
Yeah.
would say. I don't remember exactly how it happened. Probably I had some pretty crazy neighbors back in the day.
Yeah.
They might have had something to do with it. But yeah, it was a good time.
All right. So what advice, JB, can you give to the all-stars coming out of high school, going to major programs like that, really any program, what advice can you give them about showing up as a freshman and what to be prepared for and ready for?
I mean, the advice would be to be prepared and to be prepared for life to hit you at a million miles an hour. You're going to have a lot more responsibility than you had in high school from a personal standpoint, from an educational standpoint, from an athletic standpoint. You know, you're looking at basically a full time job in a lot of P4 conferences, which I'm sure we'll talk about at some point with the advent of NIL and revenue
Yeah.
sharing and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean it's a 6 to 8 hour day, 6 days a week, and it's you know you're going to have the most fun in your life. I'll tell you that. It's probably the most fun I've ever had on a baseball field was playing college baseball. Um, but it's different than high school. You know,
Yeah.
it's a faster pace. The travel's different. The lights are brighter. You know, you gotta try to keep your head on straight and go to class and do the things you need to do that got you there in the first place.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of guys get there and forget how they got there. And so
Right.
there's a little bit of that that goes on, especially if you're coming from a small school and going to a small high school going to a P4 Power Five school. Don't let the lights be too bright.
I mean, that is so true, JB, about I think some of the young men and women coming into big sports, right? They, they think once they're there, they've arrived, and the work that it took to get there, they don't have to do anymore. But in
Mm-hmm.
reality, when you get there, it's 10 times harder,
Mm-hmm.
and you said it, college athletics. I was just listening to a clip from coach, I don't know, the coach from UConn, the women's UConn
Gino
team.
Ariano.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
And about, hey, listen, man, this is a business. Let's just be honest. It's these kids have jobs, they're getting paid. This
Right.
treat them like professionals, not like students, because they're not
Right.
anymore, you know. And it's the smaller schools, the D3 stuff, I get it a little bit,
Right.
but at your level, it's win, win, and win,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then it's about the money.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the money coming from? The donors, the sponsors, all
Mm-hmm.
that kind of stuff, and who's paying for what. And now, especially today, today
Mm-hmm.
it's legal. You can do it. And these
Yep.
kids are jumping from one school to the other for the money, or they're holding out.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, the pros hold out.
Mm-hmm.
College guys don't hold out, but they are now. You
Yep.
know,
Yep.
so it's
I
just
think that
crazy.
there's a situation where balance could be had in the system should be able to be balanced out. I think it's that requires um, some newer thinking,
Yeah,
some willingness to change old ways and to give and take a little bit.
yep,
But there's nothing that says college athletes can't be college athletes and get paid for what they do and
right,
still go to school. And
yeah,
there's, I know what the law says right now about not being able to collectively bargain without an employment designation, but we're talking about writing a new law anyway,
yeah,
to manage it. So why can't we do those things now? Why
yep,
can't we, for the sake of sports in general and all stakeholders, from the kids coming up to the kids that are there now to
yeah.
the entire athletic department and the stakeholders and media rights holders, everyone should be looking out for the global best interest of
Yep.
sports, not
Well,
just
I
their
have the
own individual.
solution. I have the answer,
Let's hear it.
right? Is if I want to be an accountant, right? I have to go to college and I have to
Mm-hmm.
major in what? Accounting.
Accounting.
If I
Mm-hmm.
want to be a lawyer like you, I have to go to law school. I got to major in law.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if I want to be a professional baseball player, why can't I just major in baseball and learn all the and have classes that surround me around baseball? And that's it,
Yeah.
and then get paid, and that's it. There's my degree is in baseball. Then if I go on to the next level to coach or play, or even in high school to coach, I have a degree in baseball which says I can do all that.
Yeah.
How about that idea?
I love it. I'm all for it.
You know?
Because it's funny you say that because as an athlete at that level, I remember you look at the catalogs and you look at the classes and you look at the majors that, that have a little bit of a tendency to give you a little leeway in the springtime for baseball so you can get out of
Yeah.
class early and go. But yeah, I think that I was a psychology major at Ole Miss.
Yeah.
And then I was when I was done playing pro ball, I came back and going into law school, I was a political science major at LSU. So you can just tell the way that those things happen.
Oh yeah.
The career path is certainly different.
Oh my God. Yeah.
That's
So,
a brilliant
so,
idea, though. I like that idea.
well, you're a lawyer. Let's make it work.
Yeah, I like it.
You
I
know?
like it.
So let's see if we can get this to get up to the, because all the people in the NCAA, no disrespect to them, it's time for that whole world to disappear.
It's a. I've said this before. The model's broken.
Yeah.
You can't. It's not like something that you drop and you can put back together. I mean, this is broken. This is busted.
There's too many
Yes,
pieces.
it is on the verge of collapse because
Yeah.
we're trying to solve modern problems with antiquated solutions,
Right.
and that's not the way to go about it.
No, not at all. So looking at Ole Miss, your years there, you probably have a laundry list of cool things. But what's your most memorable moment if you have one there?
Oh man, let me ask you this: on the field or off the field?
Whatever stands
Okay,
out for you.
okay. So let's go with on the field. Uh, I remember in 2005 walking out of the tunnel in the locker room, coming out into the dugout, and you couldn't see anything out there other than people. As far as you could see were people, and it was game one of the Super Regional against Texas in our home ballpark. Texas was the eventual national champion in 2005. But man, that atmosphere, getting out on the field and talk about electric. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't know if my feet touched the grass that whole night.
Okay.
I got a chance later in the game. I wasn't the fastest runner, but I was a good base runner. I took good angles and I was smart on the base paths, and I got a chance to go into that game late in the game, and I was probably there was a pitch and change, and it was I was probably 2 feet from Coach Bianco, and he was yelling at the top of his lungs and could not hear him. I mean, the crowd was so loud, and it was just one of those moments where you're on the field, and it's everything that you could ever dream of as a kid in that moment was right there, and you
Did it
would like
feel like it? Did
live.
it feel like a dream?
It did. It
Yeah.
did, man. It really did. And it was looking back on it, I still think we won that game. We lost the series. And we in 2006 we won the SEC tournament. That was awesome. But man, it paled in comparisons because those fans in Oxford had waited a long time for a successful program to be built.
Yeah.
There was always a yearning for baseball from back in the day when Archie Manning was the shortstop, and Jake Gibbs was playing. You're talking back in the 50s and 60s, and it had been sort of a dormant sport. And Coach Bianco came in, and he's won more games than anybody except for Coach Ron Polk, which
Wow.
I don't know if Jesus could catch Coach Polk, honestly. But it was for those fans in that moment to hear them and to see them enjoying that. It was really cool, man. It's a really cool
That's a,
experience. Yeah.
it's like
And then,
surreal, right?
yeah, I'll tell you off the field, man. The first Saturday in the fall, you wake up and you open your window on campus, and there's just people everywhere in the Grove, and you get to go experience that tailgating and
Yeah.
the Walk of Champions. It's a really cool game day experience there.
That's got to be so much fun.
It's fun. Yeah.
And do you get back there much at all or no?
I was going to tell you, unfortunately, I haven't been back too much. It's a long drive. I have two young kids. But I told my wife recently, I said, look, we're gonna make a trip this spring. My son's turning 3 actually next week.
All right.
So he's ready for baseball stuff, getting ready for
He's ready for
T-ball. So
T-ball.
he's ready, man. Yeah. He runs around the house throwing everything. So I'd love to
That's
take him
awesome.
back up there. My daughter, she's 8, and I think she's starting to ask questions about where I went to school, and we've taken her to some football games at LSU, and she's been around. We've got a college here in town that we go to some games too, so
Yeah.
she's starting to think about it, which is neat. So I want to get her an opportunity to get up there and see what it was, and
Yeah.
Be fun.
Got to show
We're
her
gonna
where
make a
Dad
trip.
played.
That's it. I
You
got my
know.
name up there somewhere. I'm gonna go show her that. She'll think I'm
All
cool at
right.
least for a little while.
So your whole athletic career in college,
Mhm.
how did that whole athletic experience, JB, how did it shape you, prepare you for life after the game?
Okay, it's a good question. Again, I think it goes back to the adversity that I had to deal with. I never, like I said, never really coming up. I never had to deal with anything major, um, and that was the first time I had to really be a professional about things, the way I went about things. Um, even even though I didn't get a chance to play, I knew that I had to practice some patience, learn how to develop, and learn how to be okay with not being the best in order to ultimately become the best, best version of myself as a player. I think my junior year in college, if I had to go back and look at it again, I would say is probably, I was in probably the best shape of my career, probably in the most, mentally locked in state. I knew I had a clear vision. Coach Bianco pulled me aside and told me what he needed out of me, and plugged me in the lineup and let me go do my thing. With the guys around me, we just had a lot of fun together, man. And so it was. I think the patience, the perseverance, the loyalty. I had an opportunity to transfer to a pretty prominent school in a different conference. After my freshman year, I played, a couple summers up in the Cape Cod League where I got seen by a lot of scouts and
Where'd you play up there?
played in Wareham.
Okay.
Yeah, played in Wareham. But I still, even despite that, I still wasn't the guy for the Ole Miss reps, and so that was having to overcome that and learn how to be a good teammate was really something that I think now, in life as a father, as a husband, that's very important. Perseverance, that's something I talk to people that I represent all the time. Sports, and and I think there's a parallel between sports and life where we can operate in seasons, and there's times to prepare for a season, there's times to operate within a season, and there's times for the off season, and you're gonna you should be okay with that cycle, or you have to learn how to be okay with that. Um, and I think now in life, in my practice, I'm able to walk people through that and to say, hey man, it's not the time right now, but it doesn't mean you couldn't be working or making yourself better, or something along those lines,
Yeah.
and helping to keep sight of the bigger picture. And at the end of the day, I went to Ole Miss to win baseball games, and I went to Ole Miss really because, again, the opportunity to play for Coach Burtman wasn't there, but Coach Bianco said, "Hey, let's build something like that here." And look at it today. I mean, they've won one national championship. They've been to Omaha a couple times, but you talk about atmosphere. There's 12, 15,000 people at the ballpark now.
Yeah.
And those guys that get opportunities to play there now, man, their lives are exponentially, better, now based on facilities and everything else that goes
Yeah.
into it. And looking back, I like to think that yeah, our groups of guys had an opportunity to build something, to build a foundation that the guys that came after us, continue that. And I look back very, very fondly on that time there.
Yeah. Well, how are the facilities now? Are they better? Much better than
Oh
when you were
man,
there?
yeah. So they a couple years ago, probably 7, 8 years ago, they built a big new locker room facility down the right field line. They had a lot more room that way. So we were in the third base dugout with the original locker room space and stuff, and it was great. I mean, look, it was fantastic even when we were there. Um, and now it's next level, top notch kind of stuff. I'm fortunate to have come from the high school program that I came from, and I tell people all the time, if you're not going to a Power 4 school, Power 5 conference school, the chances of you downgrading facilities from the high school to the college level are pretty good if you play at my high school. Same thing from Ole Miss. I mean, there, it was everything was nice. I remember the grounds crew, man. Those guys, the field was just immaculate. The playing
Yeah.
surface was immaculate. If you missed a ground ball, it's probably your fault. It
I
wasn't
say there's no
a
crazy
yeah, it
hops on
wasn't
that
a bad
field.
hop. It was probably your
Yeah.
fault. Yeah.
So
So
so so you're in college, you know, and we're going to talk about your next step into the major leagues in a second, but you became a lawyer, right? Now, I played college football a long time ago, and I'm just trying to think of all the 4 years I was there, and there's 100 and so guys on the team
Hmm.
each year, and I don't know if one guy was a lawyer.
Hmm.
You don't find too many college athletes. Again, no disrespect to the college athletic world.
Hmm.
You don't find that many who graduate and go on and become lawyers. I mean, it's not like it's that easy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So how did you figure that one out? Were you thinking you were going to do something else? Where did the legal side come into play?
Okay. So I through Ole Miss. I mean, I never contemplated practicing law or becoming an attorney. Um, I when I got drafted in 2006, my agency at the time, and they're still my friends, they were both attorneys from Boston College Sports Law program. And that was the first time the seed kind of got planted, like, hey, this may be something down the road that makes a little bit of sense. Um, and I knew, I mean, I wasn't ever, like the smartest guy in class, but I have a unfortunately sometimes a unique brain that thinks in a lot of different ways and has trouble turning off at night to go to sleep. But
That's why you're a catcher.
it's a double-edged sword, man. It really is. It works in my favor a lot of times.
Yep.
And yeah, I think you're right. I like to look at things strategically. I can
Yeah.
analyze things and sort of see the field a little bit differently pretty quickly. And it's been something I've been blessed with pretty much my whole life.
Yeah.
Um, so I ended up getting released after my third season. I never played in the big leagues. Had one appearance in Major League Spring Training, in a Major League Spring Training game, but I played 3 seasons in the minor leagues with the Diamondbacks, and it was awesome. An awesome and wonderful experience in its own right. But I was driving home from California, where I got released in 2008, with a brand new wife of 6 months, and she was sleeping in the front seat of my truck and popped her head up in the middle of the night in the middle of New Mexico somewhere and said, "You need to go to law school," and went
Really?
right back to sleep. Yeah, I said, "Well," I was kind of
Where'd that
startled.
come from?
I had no idea.
Was she
So
dreaming it?
I guess. So then I asked her the next morning. I said, "What is that all about?" She said, my dad's tax attorney, this and da da da." I said, "Let's time out. I'm not going to do tax law. I like people too much. If I'm going to go to law school, I'm not saying I'm not, but I'm going to have to make sure I can do something that I can interact with people.
Yeah.
Um, so I called my agent and told him, "Hey, look, I got released," and he started doing his job. Hey, got a call, could go play with this team, could go coach here, different opportunities. And he said, "Or you could go to law school and come work with us." So, and he didn't. I asked him. I said, "Did you talk to my wife? She put you up to this?" And he's like, "No, I swear. I mean, me and my partner were talking about it the other day, and we think it makes sense." And so I was like, "All right, well, start looking at it." And I had breakfast that morning. The next morning, my wife and I talked about it. And by the time I got into the state of Louisiana, she had already transferred all my credits over to Ole Miss, notified the Diamondbacks, because that's one of the things we negotiated was, they paid for the rest of my undergraduate school because I left early. They ended up giving me all the money I needed to graduate, from undergrad school. And we just, we decided to do it. And so
Wow.
I said, "Look, I don't know what it's going to lead to. I don't know where it's going to go, but I feel like it's an opportunity. I'm a man of opportunity a lot of times." And I saw it just, hey man, it's a chance to go do something and sort of set up the next phase of my life and my family. So I never grew up. I don't, there's no, there's, I'm from a blue collar family, man. My family, has worked in the industries as long as I've been alive. Um, it, it was never. I don't have any relatives that are attorneys, and frankly, I don't. I try to operate more as an individual who helps people as opposed to being an attorney. I don't.
Yeah.
I only wear suits when I have to, and I'm
Yeah.
usually complaining when I have to put them on. But
Well, you don't need to wear a tie anymore. You can just wear the jacket.
well, not in court. You go to court,
Yeah.
you better
It's
be
court. You
buttoned
got to
up.
dress up.
Yeah, yeah,
You got to dress up.
yeah.
So I got two questions, and you mentioned it before. We didn't drive it yet, but you talked about getting released.
Mm-hmm.
And before we get to that, because I know that's a
Mm-hmm.
big
Mm-hmm.
mental craziness,
Mm-hmm.
but let's talk about draft day.
Mm-hmm.
High school, college.
Mm-hmm.
draft day.
Mm-hmm.
What the heck was that all about?
It was it was wild. I did it. I went through it twice. The first year, I played golf with my dad and my brothers. We took the day off, and it was actually my dad's birthday, so it made sense for us
So
to
you got
sort of
drafted
be.
on his birthday.
I did.
How
I did.
cool is that?
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I was drafted in the 25th round by the, I guess the Anaheim Angels at the time. I don't know when they changed their formal name. They had just come off of winning the World Series in '02, and they drafted me, and it was a really neat experience. And really, it was validity for the looking back on the decision I made to dive in and to really work hard at honing those crafts and those skills, to put myself out there against the best competition. I played all over the country against the cream of the cream to get myself ready for the next level of college or pro ball, whatever. Um, that was wild. That process was a little different because I had the Ole Miss side of things, and at that point I knew that I really wanted to play college baseball again. I grew up in the '90s and watched LSU win a bunch of national championships, and Coach Burtman win a bunch of national championships, and Omaha was a dream destination for me. And so I wanted to chase that and give that a chance. So we forewent that opportunity, but I remember the rule at the time was if you were drafted and you went to a 4 year school, if you stepped foot on campus, like through the threshold of the doorway into your first class, you were immediately ineligible until you were 21 or 3 years had gone by. If you went to JUCO, it was a little different. But I was sitting in the hallway outside of my freshman math class at Ole Miss, just thinking, do I step through this door and
Right.
it's a 3 year commitment, or do I go call my agent back? Because I'd received an offer the night before school that was pretty substantial, and so I didn't have a lot of sleep that night. And I remember the moment where I stood up and I said, no, I'm going to kind of stick to my guns on this. I knew that I had a value that I'd put on what I thought was my college experience, and I didn't want to negotiate that. And so they didn't meet that number. I picked my backpack up and went into math class. And I remember when I walked in that doorway, it was just it was a certain relief that came over me. Like, all right, this phase of your life has now begun. College
Yeah.
has really begun now, and let's embrace it. Let's move
It's like, let's
forward.
go to work.
Let's go. Yeah, let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Now,
Now
how,
the
all
second
right.
time I was drafted, I was actually we were it was in 2006, and we were in the Super Regionals. It was like the Tuesday or Wednesday before the Super Regional where we hosted the University of Miami in Oxford. I was actually in the batting tunnel taking on-field BP, and one of our equipment managers, shout out Mike Franklin, Mad Mike, he came running out and said, "JB, you got drafted." And I was like, oh, "Cool." He's yelling at me as I'm like literally in between swings. He's like, "Yeah, the Diamondbacks picked you up." I'm like, all right, great. And at that point, I was the woman that I ended up marrying. We had been together for a long time, a couple years, seriously with one another, and I was just sort of ready for that next chapter. And so when we lost in the Super Regionals, I ended up going back home, talked to her, and we were saying, all right, let's go. Now it's time to go play pro baseball. I've asked for the opportunity my entire life. I've worked for it. Now it's been put in front of me. It's time to go. So we did that, and that started that next chapter.
So you just think about this whole progression. It's got to be crazy. High school, college,
Mm-hmm.
now the major leagues. Again, you go from high school, you're the man, you show
Mm-hmm.
up as a freshman. Oh my God, you got to compete like crazy. Now you
Mm-hmm.
get to the major league, you're there and in the, drafted, you're in the minors. What's that transition like? Because I'm gonna guess, if I'm wrong, tell me. I'm gonna
Okay.
guess the facilities from Ole Miss, you went from cream of the crop to a little bit
Mm-hmm.
less. Am I right?
Substantially less.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
so talk about that
All
transition.
right. So yeah, I came home, and it's funny. I actually signed the letter of intent to play at Ole Miss and my contract with the Diamondbacks at the same seat at the same table with the same pen in my parents' dining room, just I guess 4 years apart.
You got pictures of both?
No, 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 no. But it was just for me, it's one of those memories. But so I signed the documents. I remember I got a call and said, "Hey, you got a flight at like 6 a.m. So I had to go immediately pack my stuff. And they said, look, you bring 2 bags. So I had 1 bag with clothes and 1 bag with equipment. Again, I'm a catcher, so I got to bring all my gear and my bats and everything else. And I flew out and met the team on the road. They were just starting I want to say a 7 or 8 game road trip. So I fly into Helena, Montana, and the first locker room I go into is like literally a cinder block outhouse,
Ugh.
barely the size of a normal bedroom at a home. And there's 40 guys in there changing, and I've got 2 giant suitcases. And you walk in, you're like, where do I put this stuff? And then you can't play until you take your physical. I couldn't take a physical because it was a Saturday and I couldn't get it till Monday. So I was a glorified fan for 2 games. And then I had to lug my bags around for a couple weeks. We got a couple of nights in the hotels. When we got back I was stationed in Missoula, so I was playing for the Missoula Osprey, and beautiful town, wonderful people, and I lived in an apartment complex with like 6 other guys. We had air mattresses
Oh man.
sprawled all over the place. I don't know if we ever washed a dish in that place. It was pretty nasty.
Ugh.
We rode bikes to the ballpark. The locker room in Missoula at the time was like a temporary school classroom. I guess they were going through a stadium renovation or something. So uh, it was a real experience in baseball. Hey, do you love this, or do you just want the flash and the sizzle? Do you really like getting up and playing baseball every day? 140 games in 150 days. You're going to be at the ballpark at noon and you're going to leave at 11 to midnight. And when you experience that and you really see it, it certainly changes your perspective on the game. It changes your
Yeah.
perspective on how to go about preparation and to make sure that you are, unlike in college, which, if you even go back further, college, like, they would take care of your school schedules. They would make sure you were on the bus on time. They would make sure that you had your bags packed. And I'm sure they do that in the big leagues, right? But minor leagues, you got to do it yourself. You
Yeah.
got to you got to get up. You got to go to work. It's work. That's when you learn that if you really want to be good at what you do, it's a labor of love. And you have to put it in, and you have to work, and that everyone around you is going to try to outwork you. So you better be ready for that.
Release day.
Mm-hmm.
What was that like, man? I mean, you said you played 3 years in the minors,
Yep.
and you didn't get as far as you wanted. You were in the
Mm-hmm.
cinder block locker rooms.
Mm-hmm.
Then they tell you you're done.
Mm-hmm.
How did you handle that?
So I'm fortunate. I was objective and I think foresighted in uh, my self reflection of what my potential prospect window looked like. I knew that we had the Diamondbacks organization had a ton of catchers and really good catchers. We had just signed our big league guy. I think he was 25 or 26. He had just signed a 2 or 3 year deal. The backup was like 23 and just signed a 2 or 3 year deal. So I knew that the reality was I probably wasn't going to play for the Diamondbacks if I was going to get to the big leagues. It was going to be trades or some sort of situation, just because there was the organization was stacked,
Right.
and it was done so. AJ Hinch, the Tigers manager, was a player development guy, and he was a catcher, and he loved catchers, and we loved AJ. So you had a bunch of guys, and it was a lot of fun. I met a lot of wonderful guys there, but they drafted the year after I was drafted. The year I was drafted, we had another draft pick from Stanford, wonderful guy named John Hester. John and I were teammates for the first part of our minor league career together, and John ended up playing for a couple teams in the big leagues. Fantastic guy. And then the year after me, our first round pick was a guy named Ed Easley out of Mississippi State, and Ed, fantastic guy, fantastic catcher. He played a couple years in the big leagues, I think with the Cardinals and maybe one other team. So they knew what they were doing. I was
Yeah.
bookended by big leaguers, and I kind of knew that when I came out of spring training and John was promoted to the level ahead of me. The first year that was sort of the first sign, and then the next year I moved up, but Ed came with me, And so I left spring training, and I was like, man, I don't know how long this is going to last. You know, I
Yeah.
could kind of, the writing was on the wall. I had one of my very good friends, teammate. He had come up, and he was drafted the year before me, but he got released the spring training before I did. And he was the first one that kind of put that seed in my head about, hey man, if you're not progressing, you know, this is something you need to consider. And so I looked at it, and my prospect window had closed, and I knew that. I was married now at this time. You know, I was married in January of 2008, and this is July of 2008. So it was, you know, I have additional responsibilities, and you know, other people that are relying on me to be, you know, to produce. And
Yeah.
so um, I was the product of a roster cut, a roster limit situation. We had a guy going to DL, came back, and the way it came back, I kind of knew. I mean, I
Yeah.
sort of, again, I can be objective about things when I need to, and I kind of knew the numbers didn't work. And the funny thing is, I was in the shower that night in the locker room after the game, and I said, you know what, I'm about to go out there and get released. I just had this feeling, and sure enough, I go out and was putting my stuff on, and Mike Bell, who's our manager, God rest his soul, is a fantastic man. He said, "Hey man, hey JB, come in, can you come talk to me for a minute?" And I walk in there, you know, and walk in his office, and AJ's sitting in there, and I was like, "All right, this is D-Day, you know, it's
Yeah.
time." And you know, I sat down in the chair, and it sort of, you know, the meeting was had, and um, I had a peace over me, man. I was comfortable knowing that, because I know this. I prepared as well as I physically and mentally could every day. I took care of myself in pro ball. Again, what I learned from college, I took myself. You know, hey man, you got to take care of yourself. Try to get some sleep. Don't stay out all night. You know, try to hydrate. Be ready physically as well as mentally. Um, I knew I did that. You know, I put in the work physically. I hit as many balls off the tee and early toss you could take. I mean, I would wear our hitting coaches out with extra reps. I would take ground balls. I would take fly balls. I gave myself every opportunity to get in the lineup. I played multiple positions in pro ball, um, and it just didn't work out. You know,
Yeah.
and I look back on it and I say, you know, I remember back when I was in the organization. Kurt Gibson was in the organization. Will Clark was in the organization. Trot Nixon was in the organization. You know,
Big
guys,
names.
yeah,
Big
guy,
names.
and great people, great
Yeah.
individuals. And I remember them saying, "Hey, man, look, you know, everybody here, anyone that gets drafted or signed to a contract, we feel like they have an opportunity to play in the big leagues. We wouldn't sign you if we didn't feel that way.
Yeah.
It's just some of you are more consistent than others. And some of you are going, you know, we know what we're going to get. You know, it's a business model, and understanding, again, going back to the being okay with not being the best.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, I've done everything I can do. This is just not where I'm supposed to be. This if it's not the organization I'm supposed to be in, or the game I'm supposed to be playing, or whatever it is, it just wasn't there. And so when I felt the peace come over me about, hey man, I know I've done everything I can do, and this is just sort of take your medicine and understand it's over, and be thankful for the time you had as a professional athlete. Um, I did, and I look back on it. I don't regret that. I don't regret playing. I don't regret, you know, being released. I don't regret not playing the rest of the season, or signing anywhere else. Um, you know, I'm very comfortable and content knowing that side of my career, I did everything I could do to be as good as I could be, and my best just wasn't good enough, you know. But
Well,
I learned a lot, you
yeah,
know.
I was gonna say it sounds like it was a blessing.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like you realized where you're at. You knew something was going on. You kind of thought maybe there is no next level.
Mm-hmm.
And it was almost like, hey, you know what? If they didn't do that, how many more years would you have been playing at that level? And maybe you wouldn't be doing what you're doing today.
That's right, and that's taking some time to get to it. And look, I have plenty of friends and former teammates that played 7, 8, 9. You hear stories, you know, guys. The Drew Maggi came up with the Pirates last year. I think he played 11 years in the minor leagues, and you know what? Good for him, man.
Yeah.
He that was his path, was to do that and to be there. I'm comfortable saying that my path was to not, you know, and to recognize and realize that, and be okay with pivoting, you know,
Yeah.
and moving into the next phase.
That's you said no regrets, right?
Hmm.
there's very few, JB, college or professional athletes that end their career with no regrets.
Sure,
Some of them, I should have done this, should have done that.
sure.
Why didn't I do this? Why didn't do that?
So I mean, and I've thought. I mean, look, don't get me wrong. I've had plenty of thought about this. I mean, I was recruited by Duke. I was recruited by Stanford. I was recruited by West Point. I was recruited by Harvard. Ivy League schools. As an attorney now, it'd be really nice to have an Ivy League undergrad on my
Yeah,
resume. You know, but if I'd have gone to any of those schools, the woman who's now my wife and the mother of my children, we wouldn't be together
no,
because I'd be
yeah,
across the country. She couldn't have driven, and because she made the sacrifice to be able to get there, she could only do that because of the proximity where we went to school.
yeah,
You know, I could have transferred after my freshman year, and I'm glad I didn't
yeah,
because the next year I played more. I met my agent who put me on the pathway to go to law school. Who put the
yeah,
seed in my head about it. I met him in my sophomore year at
yeah.
Ole Miss. If I was at the other school, I wouldn't have met him
Yeah,
potentially.
and
And I'm
and
proud of it.
and you're a testimonial to, I don't want to say the old school because you're too young to be old school yet, right? But today's athletes, like freshman year, I'm not playing, I'm out. Transfer
Mm-hmm.
portal, where am I going to go? I mean, there's some of these kids transfer four times
Mm-hmm.
before they're, I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You know? So
Yeah. And look,
you kind
I think that there are different motivating factors behind some of those things
right,
nowadays. And I'm not gonna judge anybody for the decisions they make. And I think that everyone has the right to do what they think's in their own best interest. The one thing that I would bring to the table in those situations is just the caution and the understanding that the grass is greener where you water it. The
right,
portal cuts both ways, especially when you get into the situations now with you know the impending house settlements and roster limitations and revenue sharing and schools opting in or opting out. It's not as the decision to get into the transfer portal should not be a two-dimensional yes or no
yeah,
decision. It's got to be a multi-dimensional, multifaceted examination of what the goals are and what the expectations are, what the realities are.
yeah,
I think it needs to be an educated and reasoned decision and not a decision based on emotion. And I
yeah,
think that too many of these kids these days, um, they like the flash and sizzle, and they want that, and they get sold on emotion. And I mean, the story out of Las Vegas, that's one story that you hear about. It's
yeah.
not the only story that's happened.
Where did that kid end up? Anywhere?
He's redshirted, so he's taken himself off of the rosters, essentially now an in-season holdout to preserve his last year of eligibility. So he'll be back in the portal when the window opens. And I hope for his sake he'll have sage advice and negotiate a proper written deal where
Yeah,
everyone understands what's going on. And again, we're not privy to all the information that goes into those things or
yeah,
situations, but man, I think that the world of sport, the world in general, moves too fast these days.
yeah,
And in sports, you play seasons, you play games, right? And that's good. You can do those things, but you need to act and play a little bit of a longer game. You can act quickly, you can play the game, you can get ready for it, but the teams are successful, the organizations are successful not because they win and lose today. Their season's longer than your season. They're
yeah.
gonna play it longer, and they're gonna give themselves more opportunities to win and to succeed because they slow down and they're patient.
Right.
You know.
I just think one big thing is the young kids today, JB, they're just so impatient.
Mm-hmm.
They're just so impatient. They want instant gratification. Back in the day when I was playing, like if you showed up and you played as a freshman, it was like you're a phenom.
Mm-hmm.
It like didn't happen,
Mm-hmm.
and you had to wait your turn.
Mm-hmm.
And the guys today, they just don't want to wait their turn.
So I think that a lot of that there's a lot of social media component to that, in my
Yeah,
opinion. Everybody wants to sort of show what's out there, but I mean, I look at a guy like Arch Manning. I mean, now he comes from a family that gives him good advice, and there's a sound plan and a sound understanding. The reason he went to Texas was to play for Coach Sarkisian, not
yeah,
for anything else.
right.
So as long as Coach is there, he's going to develop. And yes, does he start on the 2 yard line because of his last name? Maybe, but the kid's put in time. He's put
Yeah.
in work. Clearly, I mean, you can see. Look at his body. I mean, he's
Oh
he's
yeah.
he's put in work in the weight room.
Yep.
And his teammates love him. You know, he could go in there and be a jerk about things, but he's clearly not.
Sure.
That's a guy you want to emulate.
And he can leave and go anywhere he wants.
Anywhere he wants,
Yeah.
anywhere,
Yeah.
and he chooses to stay. He chooses the hard. And look, here's the deal: if you stay in a situation like that, it's going to be hard. If you move and transfer, there's going to be some hard components to that, and you may run into another situation that's hard. Like nothing's going to be easy.
Nothing at that level.
You just get to choose your heart. You
Yeah.
get to choose which direction you want to go, and how you want to attack those situations, and really what is your end game? What, are you trying to win the game of social media likes? Are you trying to win the game of life where you're setting up your family potentially generations to come?
Yeah. I mean, I love what you just said. You choose your heart, and it's so true, and wherever you go, it's going to be hard. At that level, everything's hard.
Mm-hmm.
Everything.
Well, think about what you do on a daily basis. It's not easy, right?
Yeah.
Professional life is hard.
Yeah.
You're going to have challenges. You're going to have good days and bad days, but there are challenges. And the
Yep.
reason that you can go out and earn an honest wage is because you take problems for people and you take their heart and you make it easier.
Yeah.
You help them out, but you still have to work. You have to create. You have to, there's challenges. And so part of that maturation process, again, going back to college, was, hey, it was tough. It was tough learning how to wash my own clothes and cook my own dinner and,
Yeah.
wake up on time.
You weren't living in a hotel anymore.
Used to my dad coming in the morning waking me up.
Yeah.
Like I had to actually set an alarm and get to class on time because classes were checked. We had accountability now, right?
Yep.
Class were checked. You miss one class, because if you miss one class, you're going to be running until you're not able to run anymore. You're going, we don't. There's an accountability. There's a certain standard to the program, And I did mention something earlier, and I want to make sure I touch on this, because as a business principle, as a life principle, from Coach Bianco. Coach Bianco was a catcher. Okay, Coach Bianco was actually drafted, I think, 5 times. Never signed a professional contract. I think he was drafted like each year out of I think he was drafted out of high school and then out of JUCO twice and out of LSU twice. Never signed. He was hard as could be on catchers. I mean, he was tough. He demanded a lot of us. And one thing that he told me, and he would, I mean, it was well known in practice, is that there's no such thing as a wild pitch. Right? Now, in the scorebook, there is a such thing as a wild pitch. And the scorers do it all the time. But as a catcher, there's no such thing as a wild pitch. I don't care where the ball's thrown. I don't care where it is. I don't care how it's thrown, how fast, how slow, how bouncy, whatever. It's go get it. Your job is to catch the ball. If there's a ball that gets by you and hits the backstop, it's your fault. Don't transfer blame. And you have to be able to pick up people when they throw the ball in the dirt, right? And now, as an attorney, as a dad, as a consultant, as a advisor to different people, it's like, hey, if we sit down and you start talking about how this or that's affecting you and how it's changing things or whatever, I'm going to tell you there's no such thing as a wild pitch. Yeah. And you're going to look at me like I'm crazy, and then I'm going to explain to you, like, hey, if you can control it, if you can put leather on it, right? In that analogy, it's your responsibility to catch it. Don't let people don't wait on people to do things for you in life or in business. You can put yourself in position to succeed if you prepare and you understand, hey, I have the chance to do this. I have the responsibility to do this. And I mean, look, I live life. I have people that work here in this office with me. I have family members, and they know that when we're working together, I've got them. There's no such thing as a wild pitch.
You know what that's going to be?
What's that?
That's going to be the title of your book.
Oh, maybe, man. I don't know.
How about that? That'd be a great title.
That's pretty good one. Yeah, you're going to trademark it?
That would be really good. So what inspires you? Okay, baseball's over now. We talked about how, through, I don't know, maybe a dream, maybe who knows what, but law came into play. Your wife said, hey, let's be a lawyer. Your other guy said, let's be a lawyer. You became one. But how did the athletic side come in? How did that, talk about that? You could have specialized in any kind of law.
Yeah.
How'd you end up being with athletes?
I've done a lot of different kind of stuff. I mean, I've had a pretty robust career. My sister-in-law just walked in. Thanks. I've done a lot of different things. I've started out with a transactional practice. I've done corporate work. I've done mergers and acquisitions. I've worked with complex commercial transactions. I've done secessions and wills and things like that. I've litigated cases. I've been in court. I've tried cases. Um, at the end of the day, I looked at three main components. Am I doing what I'm good at? Like what I'm naturally good at, am I doing that every day? And yes, I mean I'm good at understanding people and analyzing situations and helping to plan and prepare, those kinds of things. But as an attorney, if I'm litigating a case, I may not be the best person to write the brief because someone's going to write better than me, right? I may not be the best person to pick the jury because someone's going to have a specialty there, and I'm okay with those things. Um, but overall, I'm not really good at a lot of phases of trial practice or those kinds of things. I'm good with a team, but individually, it's sort of different. Number two, am am I enjoying what I'm doing? Right. So am I good at it, and am I enjoying it? I enjoy helping people. I don't necessarily enjoy some of the aspects of having to, again, put on a suit, button up, argue cases in front of the judge that, you think is a frivolous issue, or this opposing counsel's difficult to deal with, or whatever it is. Um, that part of it, as a daily practice, I've learned over time, it just didn't really make a ton of sense for me. But I like the helping people side of things. I like the representation and the understanding of how I'm going to help this person create value for themselves, or to protect their value that they bring to a situation. And the third thing again goes back to values. What value am I adding, or what value needs to be added? And so in from practicing law, there people say lawyers are a dime a dozen. They're everywhere. They're on every street corner, and there's probably several hungry lawyers in your town because there's so many lawyers, especially in Louisiana has probably one of the highest per capita of attorneys in the country. And yeah, what I do provides value, but the scale of what I can do isn't necessarily commensurate with my ability to provide that value. Like I'm limited by jurisdiction where I am to what I can do, and certain types of practice you need specializations, and it's just sort of a different deal. And so I look at all those things and I say, okay, well, I'm really good at sports. I've understood sports my entire life. I understand business because I've done it, personally, and you know, I've run my own business. I've built my own businesses. I've advised businesses, so on and so forth. And the sports side of it, like, yeah, I get that. I've done it since I could walk. I'm good at it because I can go from a conversation like this at a high professional level, with you or an athletic director and their staff, front office, a GM, and then I can turn around and communicate to the player that may not understand things on the same level, or may not like to hear bad news in that way, right? Like,
Right.
you can talk to him and get it there. And then again, adding value on the level that I can. You talk about millions of high school players out there in 32 or 34 states that could capitalize on their NIL right now. Another million or so collegiate athletes that absolutely can capitalize on their NIL.
Yep.
I'm an NFLPA certified contract advisor agent. Guys in the league need help too. And so
Yep.
it allows me an opportunity to really be able to take the value that I can add or create or expose for people, and spread that across a larger swath of the population. So
Yeah.
this gives me an opportunity to sort of really operate in the way that I want to operate, and help the people that I want to help.
That's awesome. So talk about how your your elite college level of baseball, your professional level of baseball, how that helps you relate to the athletes in the legal side. Because sometimes, if you weren't an athlete in your background, the athletes
Mm-hmm.
might look at you and say, "Well, come on, yeah."
Mm-hmm.
But being a professional athlete, a high elite college athlete, and now you're a lawyer representing athletes, how does that
Mm-hmm.
connection go together?
Well, I think it benefits the athlete more than
Yep.
anything. So I have personal experiences that they either have, are going through, or would like to have, right? Whether that's getting recruited, being at a Power Four school, getting drafted, playing professionally. Yeah, I was fortunate enough, and I was blessed with enough talent to be able to do a lot of those things that, on field accomplishments that not a lot of people get a chance to do. I understand, I've not only have I, been released, to be at the low of the low. I've been sort of in a, not in a trade, but I was transitioned from one team to another in the middle of a season. So I've had to pack up everything and make that move. I've negotiated different deals with different people, both, athletically and, you know, practically speaking as an attorney. And what I do on the litigation side of things is I negotiate a person's value against $1 billion corporation. Well, that sounds a lot like negotiating a person's value in contract against a $1 billion institution or NFL team,
Yeah.
or brand. And so I think it's a there's a I, I think it's a diverse background, both practical and experiential, and educational, and that allows me to sort of bring in a tailored approach to situations. I don't, again, my brain thinks and analyzes things a little differently, and the athlete in me is still extremely competitive, still extremely disciplined, still extremely motivated. I like to win. I love to win. And as an athlete, you can probably understand that I hate to lose more than I love to win. And I I refuse to be outworked. I refuse to be underprepared. Um, it just that part of me as an athlete is still there, which helps the attorney side. And the attorney side again, just sort of being able to channel that back through and really connect with people on a personal level.
Yeah.
Understand, hey, these are my pain points, these are my goals, these are my objectives, this is my timeline. I do that every day with the clients that I've worked with the last 10 plus years of my practice. Um, it's just no different. It's no different in athletics. It's just you're talking to a different audience.
Yeah.
That's really all it is.
So what are some of the legal challenges you see these young athletes are facing today
Ooh.
that where you step in and say, hey, listen, this is how I can help solve your problem,
Sure. So first of all, the national letter of intent has been eliminated.
right?
So now what the NCAA is doing is they're wanting these kids to sign agreements, that include the terms of their financial package, all included into one document on signing day. So the they've taken the opportunity for these kids to really slow down and understand what they're getting themselves into, and they've packed it into one document on an eventful day where the kids just want to sign and take their pictures and put it on Instagram, right?
Yeah.
That's one thing. You
So
want to make
what
sure that you
does
can.
that really mean, JB? The letter of the signing letters is taken away, but does
Kids
that
are
mean
signing
if they sign
contracts.
the yeah,
They're
but if
pretty
they
much
sign
signing
the
contracts.
document, they can just still leave or
No,
no?
no. So that's the thing. The new documentation is going to limit some of their ability to transfer. You're
Mm,
talking about, you start talking about putting down all financial terms of the student athlete's enrollment at the institution are going to be in one document, which
got it.
means, hey, we're going to give you this as a tuition stipend, and this is an NIL, and this is a collective payment, and this is whatever it is. Hey, if you're an athlete and you contractually agree to something and then you don't fulfill that, that's going to put you in a spot, right?
Now, will they have to pay that stuff back?
It depends on the contracts. I would doubt it. I would doubt it. I think that would cause an uproar. But I think what happens in those situations when you have kids leave, it becomes more problematic for the people coming behind them
Yeah.
because the coaches are a little bit leery. They're a little bit skeptical about how this is all going to play out. That's one way. The transfer portal. I mean, I negotiated a couple of transfers this past summer for people, just helping them out, talking to coaches on their behalf, whether they were in the middle of something else or, if you're going to sit down on a negotiating table by yourself and the other side has 3 or 4 people on a coaching staff and you're alone, you're going to lose every
Yeah.
time. And so just trying to level the playing field. I'm not saying that I'm trying to, unfairly advantage the player, but help the player and the player family understand exactly what they're getting into, exactly what's expected of them,
Yeah.
because once they know that, and once they can plan for that and get there, that allows the athlete to go do what the athlete can do. Go play,
Yeah.
go be a stud, go play your sport, go do what you love. Let me and your family deal with the business side of things.
Yeah.
You can focus on that. You can use me as a resource for, hey, where should I go? How should I do this? Hey, what if I'm at a school and I do have to transfer, but I got to break a lease, right? Like you never know, those things come up. Obviously, kids, what if they get themselves in a little bit of trouble with the police? I'll know immediately steps to take to where, we can help them out of those situations. I think it's a unique way to do it. I don't really know if there's and frankly, I don't feel comfortable saying that I put it in a box of being an agent or being a this or
Yeah.
being a that, but just helping athletes maximize their captive opportunity in front of them, not only now, but for post playing career success.
Yeah.
I've had more success off the field than I have on the field. And I'm going to live a longer life off the field than I will on the field, as do
Yep.
most, if not all, other athletes.
Yeah.
So I think it's wise and I think it's prudent to start making your exit strategy from the beginning, because it's inevitable, right? There's
Mm.
an inevitability there that you need to be prepared for, and if you're not, then you can make bad decisions along the way. You could put yourself potentially in a disadvantaged position, and I think that's a little bit of a unique way to look at it. Obviously, everybody wants to go and go and go and get the big deals, and
Yeah.
that's great. Everybody should want to do that. But I think the real magic is developing the relationship that's going to outlast the playing career,
Yeah.
and
I mean,
making
what you
sure
said
that.
is, I mean, it's a killer statement of create the exit strategy from the beginning. Because these young guys or girls, they think they're going to play forever.
Mhm.
They don't realize it's what's the average NFL? 2 years. I don't
Two
know
to
what the
three, yeah,
average baseball is,
yeah,
and maybe four. Who knows?
yeah.
And it's
And even
crazy.
then, even in those circumstances, if you really think of the average NFL career, the average Major League Baseball career, those guys are going to go in and they're going to make, even with signing bonuses. Let's say they're not a first round pick, and they're going to be a 6th round pick in football, or a 12th round pick in baseball. They're going to sign a decent signing bonus. They're going to sign about a league minimum type deal. They're going to get there, have their cup of coffee, bounce around a little bit. Yeah, they may have 2 or 3 seasons in football, or 6 or 7 seasons in baseball. Hey, those guys are like 30 when they retire,
Yeah.
and they might have made $10 million, but that's a long time from 30 till
Oh
you
my
know
God.
you get to the pearly gates,
Yeah.
and if you're relying on just that, I think it's short sighted and foolish not to capitalize on. Hey, I'm an athlete in this town. People are going to go to the games. They're going to watch you. You can build your brand. You can develop your brand, and you can start laying down foundations and seeds and roots for where you're going to go after your career.
Yeah.
You know,
How involved do you get with their parents?
I mean, I don't parents or spouses or whatever. I mean, it's every case is individual. Who obviously, if an athlete's under 18, I'd rather talk to their parents before I talk to them, just out of respect to the family.
Yep.
Even in college, I mean, a professional is different. Approaching a professional is different. Even college student, if you can approach the family and get to know them, I think it's beneficial because, yeah, I mean, we're going to do right by them. We're going to give them the best advice we can. We're going to empower them and help them make the best decisions for them in their career. But they're going to rely. They have relied on their family and their loved ones for a lot longer than they've relied on me. And
Yeah.
so if I can understand that dynamic, if I can understand what makes those people tick, I feel like it allows me the opportunity to give them better advice, or to give them better information, to say, hey, look, if you have a guy who, let's say you have a free agent in the NFL, and you're looking at contracts, and he's got a chance to play in Houston, and his grandmother is sick, and she's in the hospital, let's say, and he's from somewhere in Texas. He can play in Houston, and he can play in Pittsburgh. Same deal on the table. If I know the family, I'm going to say we're gonna make Houston make sense, right? We're going to
Yeah.
talk about that from the very beginning, because I know being home close to family matters to you.
Yeah.
That's important. If you don't know the family, if you don't know what makes the guy tick, and if you're only about, again, a two-dimensional look at black and white, what do the numbers say? Yeah, you can do that. And there have been plenty of guys that have done a long, successful career doing it.
Yeah.
It's not the way I want to do it. It's not the way I think that my value proposition doesn't align with that. I really want to take an approach of understanding what makes people tick and why they do the things they do, what matters to them. And once we know those things, I think that it allows me an opportunity to do my job better, to get better information to the athlete, and ultimately have better decisions and discussions before they can make a decision as a group.
Well, you must have been reading my mind on my next question then, because I
Okay.
was going to say, yeah, I mean, and you just answered it, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Is the trust factor in your profession with athletes is got to be so far above the top of the line need. How do you build the trust with the athletes so they can just look at you and say, you know what, I'm going with this guy. I believe in him. He's going to guide me the best way. My parents are in line. My spouse is in line. How do you build that trust?
Time. Time, effort, real effort. You have to really care. You can't say you care. You can't say you'll be there. Like, you have to show up. You have to be accountable to those people, whoever they are. Even if it's, if you say that you're going to call the athlete's mom after the game and give an update, you better call her. If you don't, you're going to start eroding some of that trust. I think it takes an outward showing of, really showing and proving to the athlete that you do have their best interest in mind.
Yeah.
Perhaps walking through a deal where you make less money or you make less of an impact, but it helps the athlete more. Being able to understand that nuance, and doing that for them, showing them.
Yeah.
And then look, you build a name for yourself, and that's the only thing you got. And if you go out there and you act, without integrity, you cut corners. If you lie, cheat, and steal, it's going to get caught. You're going to get
Yeah.
figured out, and you're going to be exposed. And so, again, going back to where I came from, blue collar upbringing, to Coach Bianco, and no wild pitches. If I tell you I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And it's just showing up time and again, as an athlete, as a teammate, really showing up and saying, "Hey, man, I got you," or lady, whatever it is, I got you, and I mean when I say that your interest is the most important thing that we're talking about here.
It's awesome. So you've gone through it. What advice can you give to athletes now they got released, or they're retiring, or they're just decide they don't want to play anymore, transitioning from the game to life, next career? What kind
Mm-hmm.
of advice can you give these guys?
That's a great question. I think, for me, what really helped, honestly, was taking a break from baseball. I was a little burnt out on the game at the time that I was released, and going through that emotional process, and that sort of, yeah, you have this goal in life, and then you experience it, and then you lose it. Man, it's okay to take a break. It's okay to do non-sports things for a while. Go sell cars, go sell insurance, you know, go do whatever you want to do, um, and get away from that for a little while, and sort of, that gave me space to reassess the reasons that I enjoyed sports so much, the reasons that I am continually drawn back to sports, because I took that time to say, hey, man, I'm going to go to law school. I'm going to be so focused on this, and I'm going to get out of law school, and I know that I'm going to set myself up for success professionally, irrespective of sports. And when I
Yeah.
did that, it coincided with my daughter being born, which then, all of a sudden I'm helping out with the bottle at night, or, I'm up early in the morning and I'm Sports Center's on. And then say, okay, well, now I'm watching highlights again. Now I'm watching College Game Day again. Now, back
Yep.
into it. Then I have a son, and now it's, hey, I want to watch football. I want to. And so it comes back. The athlete never leaves you. I'll say that,
Right.
right? The athlete never leaves the person's soul or who they are. But you might have to take a step back from the game.
It's almost like you decompress,
Yeah. Yep.
right?
Just
You
like the
def
off season. I mean, you
Yeah.
take an off season, and you come back at some point. You're refreshed, and your off season in sports maybe 2 or 3 months. In life, it could be 2 or 3
Right.
years. and you got to understand the timelines are different.
Yeah. But you know what, JP, what's hard for so many athletes is that final season.
Hmm.
And I coined this phrase a while back that athletes die twice.
Yep.
They die when the game is over,
Hmm.
but the problem is they got to live with it.
Hmm.
And then they die in reality, as
That's tough.
we do, right?
It's tough.
And some guys just can't handle it.
Hmm.
Can't handle it. You know,
But
and
I think that, and I'm not saying that the only that my way is the way to do it, but I think that if people understood that it's okay to not be what society thinks you should be for a little while, and you go figure out who you actually are,
yeah.
that's okay.
Oh yeah.
That's perfectly fine. And I think a lot of times people they allow themselves to get pigeonholed and boxed in, and it's not healthy.
No. So is there anything you would change? Looking back on all your successes, all the cool things you've done, you phenomenal baseball career, got an awesome legal practice, you got a beautiful family. I'm like, it's like you're living the perfect life.
Mhm.
Is there anything you would change?
Athletically, yes. There's one thing I would do differently. I quit playing football after my freshman year in high school, and I wish that I could claw that time back and go play Friday Night Lights again. Absolutely, but
Yeah.
nothing else. I mean, that's literally the only thing.
Well, you could always watch the movies.
Yeah, well, and I mean, I'm probably gonna go to the ballpark tonight and watch.
Yeah.
There's home. My high school homecoming is tonight, so I'm probably
Yeah.
gonna stop by on the way home.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Well, JB, listen, we're wrapping up here. I'm an athlete. I'm hearing this story. How do I get a hold of you? I want to
sure.
talk to
Thank
you.
you.
What do we do?
Sure. I'm on LinkedIn. I've got a good profile going there. I've got a website that should be launching here any day now. It's www.jbrashear.co, brashear.co. Um, I have a phone number that's posted for my office line. People can find it there.
You want to just tell them what the number
Sure.
is?
Yeah. So, yeah, my office line is 337 465 2120. You're going to get the law firm, but they'll get you to me.
That's awesome. So I'm hoping that I can imagine an athlete just thinking I got to call this guy. Because everything you're saying is it's all around one word. It's called value.
Hmm.
The value you bring in to these athletes, it's honest and it comes with integrity. You can just tell by listening to you.
I
You,
appreciate that.
you know, and
I worked really hard on that, and I do align myself with core values and the way that I
yeah,
approach things, and so I appreciate you saying that. I appreciate you recognizing that.
it just oozes out of you.
Thank you.
And you can tell by the things you say, it's not about nothing that you've talked about out of every stage of your life has really been about you.
Hmm.
Even though you were the focal point of it, it's about all the other people that have helped you get to where you are, what you're doing, and now you're just turning it around and giving it back.
Yep. I think it's a calling. I really
Yeah,
do.
that's exactly what it is. That is so cool. Well, listen, is there anything else I haven't asked you yet, JB, that we haven't talked about for this last hour and a half that you think we should
Man,
throw out there before we wrap it up?
I don't know. I ask my clients that all the time, and I say, look, it's probably because I catch you off guard. I know I talk a lot about a lot of different things, but no, I really appreciate you having me on, Jeff. It was a wonderful opportunity. I think what you're doing is fantastic, and you're allowing people the opportunity to add value to the greater world of sports, man. So
Yeah.
thank you for what you do, and I enjoyed this very much.
Well, thanks for being on, and I'm telling you, that's a book.
Maybe so. We'll see.
There's no wild pitch. That's your book.
We'll see
You know,
about that.
but
I'll put that on the vision board for a couple of years from
there you go.
now. All right,
Well,
man.
thanks for being on the show, JB. Appreciate it, and looking forward to all your continued success.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate you, man.